All right, still with me. Criminal defense attorney David Bruno and litigation trial attorney Richard Schoenstein. And with us here for this segment again, forensic criminologist Dr. Laura Pettler. All right, Rich, I'm going to start with you. I want to talk about the circumstances, all that we've learned about her. What does it tell us about the circumstances? The shell casings found under her body, also found on the property. The weapon came from the property. At least that's what it's telling me. She was the crime was particularly destructive, right? The person wanted to kill her, shot her 5 times, ending, of course, with the headshot, right? Again, another headshot. Her ring inside the car, on the floor, the DNA under her fingernails. What does that tell you? Does that tell you anything about what happened here?
All right, well, let's start with the ring in the car, because that could be a red herring, so to speak, because lots of people take off a wedding ring at some point for a variety of reasons. It was sort of hinted that we might see some evidence about problems in the marriage between Alec and Maggie Murdaugh, and we haven't seen very much of that. They seem to have some pretty common, pretty run-of-the-mill disagreements and communication issues that a lot of married couples have. We haven't seen any evidence of anything substantial. There's nothing so out of the ordinary about her day. There's nothing to suggest that she had any idea she was going to be killed that day. But the pattern with the gun definitely demonstrates that whoever killed her did it purposefully and wanted to make sure they finished the job.
Yeah, clearly not. I'm having trouble accepting a collateral damage thing. They weren't there to kill her, but I'm going to ask Dr. Pettler that question, because we're going to talk about the manner of death. Again, shot 4 or 5 times. Clearly, to me, targeted, shot, and then making sure that you get her with the headshot at the end. It was at close range. Then there's this little tire mark. We know there was some movement. There was some disagreement as to whether it might have been running. We know that that's what the defense wants this jury to believe, but we're not sure of that. But we also know that there was this tire mark that she might have gotten from a parked ATV that was nearby where she fell down. What is some of this stuff telling you, Dr. Pettler?
So I'll tell you, one of the things, Michael, that I think of first is that we have stagers who exhibit enormous amounts of aggression and anger and rage towards victims when they're trying to stage it like there's somebody else that killed them. So that is something that does happen in the world of staging and in the world of staging research. I'm wondering, did she back into the ATV? Did she back into it, or was she maybe trying to get on it, or did she bump into it with the back of her leg? Did she see the gun coming at her? And then the purposeful location, it's very, very critical to understand that these wounds to both victims, and especially Maggie, are in such purposeful locations. A lot of times when you see a stabbing death, you have all these stab wounds going on all these different directions because both the victim and the offender are moving at the same time. In this particular situation, most of them, you can tell, are very deliberately and purposeful to the chest, and to the leg could be a femoral issue, and of course to the head. I mean, these are extremely aggressive, rage-filled type. I am definitely going to make sure that you are dead, and it's just it's a very difficult thing for, I'm sure, everybody to see in that courtroom.
Yeah, it's tragic, and we haven't been looking at them. Thankful for that, for sure. David Bruno, for you, I want to talk about time of death, because I think timeline, very important in this case. Let's call it up here about her phone. Now, her phone gives us a sense of what happened. The phone display was on at 8:49. There was a message read at 8:49:27. At 8:49:31, the phone locks, okay? Now, the display goes off at 8:54, and according to testimony, that was a human event. There's an orientation change from 8:54:40 to 8:54:44. The camera comes on to see if it can recognize a face, but it did not unlock the phone. So the timeline here says the time of death had to have been sometime between that 8:49 and 8:54:44, actually before that, 8:54 period, that at that point, the shooter probably picks up the phone and wants to get in and can't get in. Do you agree, David, that this is important because at the end of the day, this timeline, both sides are going to have a narrative about this timeline and when these murders happened and where the defendant was.
Yeah, the timeline is critical. I mean, circumstantially, this is a circumstantial case. And it's so important is because the statement that we heard yesterday, where the defendant said he was not at the dog kennel. And then there's the video that Paul had that has his voice that we just played for our audience that contradicts that statement. And that's relevant to the timeline because that's how the prosecutor is able to show when they're alive at the very least, and then use his statements. I mean, let's think of this case without the defendant's statements and without the bad character evidence that has been lodged into this case over the last 7 days. Without it, I mean, this prosecutor's got some big problems, but it's the defendant's statements in the car right here, months later with Corey Fleming, and then the evidence that comes in on the roadside shooting about him acknowledging lying to police and staging a suicide goes to his credibility. And it's not supposed to go to credibility, it's supposed to go to motive, but every single person I've heard talk about it says it goes to credibility, and that's how the jury's gonna take it too.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's always the cover-up, not the crime. All right, Dr. Laura Pettler, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Truly appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be with us. Rich and Dave, you're going to be sticking around. Alec Murdaugh was interviewed by police once.